All right, we are back. It's so good to be back, everybody. I know it's been a little while since I posted any of these devotionals, so it's good to be back. We're going to be in Acts chapter 14, verses 8 to 18 today. A very good portion of scripture. So let's go ahead and read it. Now at Lystra there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking, and Paul, looking intently at him, and seeing that he had faith to be made well, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." He sprang up and began walking. And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lysonian, "The gods have come down to us in likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. Then in verse 13, the priests of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance of the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, crying out, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news, that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. Past generations, he allowed all the nations to walk in their own ways, yet he did not leave himself without witness. For he did good by giving you rains from heaven in fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness." Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the people from offering sacrifice to them. All right. So we left off last week, and last time, not last week, we were talking about the first 8 verses where Paul and Barnabas, they end up in Iconium. Of course, we saw there that they faced persecution. They were chased away. So they flee Iconium, and they come to this place, Lystra. And it says, "Now at Lystra there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and had never walked." The Bible 3 times tells us that this man can't walk. 3 different ways in one verse. He is sitting who could not use his feet, he was crippled from birth, and he had never walked. That is pretty much saying the same thing 3 times, trying to get emphasis. This guy cannot walk. He's never been able to walk, and if it was up to just what this world is, he would never walk, if it was up to the worldly doctors and physicians. But he's about to come, face to face with the real physician, the physician who saves our souls, as Jesus. Of course, it wouldn't be Jesus personally doing this, but it would be his disciples, and through the whole power of the Spirit, we're seeing. Okay, so here they are, and then they are standing and can't walk. If you guys remember back in chapter 3, Peter and John heal a man lame from birth. You remember that people were amazed, and John and Peter get brought to the Sanhedrin because they use that opportunity to share the gospel. You guys crucified the Christ. You crucified the one who came to save you, and you put him on a cross, and you hung him. You remember, they perceived that they were uneducated common men, right? And they were like blown away. What is going on? So this man's been crippled from birth, and he listened to Paul speaking. Paul looking intently at him, seeing he had faith to be made well. So Paul looks at him, and somehow God has given Paul the ability to kind of discern some spiritual things. So Paul looks at this man, and he sees he is looking intently at him. He wants to hear what I'm having to say. He's actually paying attention. Unlike the guy in Acts chapter 3 who was just saying, "Hey, can you guys give me something?" This man clearly wanted to know what Paul was saying, and he listened intently. This word intently is atenizo in Greek. The Bible uses this word 3 times. It means to look intently at or stare at. All 3 times it was used, it was about Paul. Back in 13:9, and then we'll see it in 23:1. So looking intently. So this spiritual gift here, it seems like Paul is able to see that this man has some sort of faith. He had the faith to be healed, it says. He had the faith to be made well. And so here we go. The gift to see things in the spiritual realm is something that even people today have. Some people see into it more than others, and this is one of the spiritual gifts that the Spirit works in. But here we are, and Paul says in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." And the guy sprang up and he began walking. Just like that. If you guys remember from chapter 3, we talked about this. When you're crippled for life, you have muscle atrophy, where your muscles they shrink, and to the point that there's nothing. If he had never walked in the however long he's been alive, his muscles would be not there. They're basically non-existent. His brain can't send signals to his legs to move. His legs haven't moved, so that means the muscles die off. So not only is this miracle getting the brain signals to move the leg, but the legs need the strength to walk. It would take years of rehab for this man to walk again if he had been lame from birth. Years of rehab, physical therapy, going through just really slow, painful process. But with God, his healing is instant. He heals fully in instant. I think it's such a cool testimony to our Lord. So he stands up and he begins walking, and the crowd saw that Paul had done, and they lifted up their voices, and they speak in their native language, Iconium. The gods, they have come down to us in the likeness of men. So, real quick, some of the reason they might be thinking this is there was like a myth, like a fairy tale, so to speak, of these two gods were going to come visit them. They're in Lystra. There was, of course, Zeus and Hermes were going to come visit them. And they had this belief that they were going to come. And when these two men come and they heal this man, their instinct is to think back to that little myth or fairy tale or however you want to call it, and think back to that and be like, that's supposed to happen. These are the guys. These are the gods. They're here, guys. But Paul doesn't know what's going on right now, and neither does Barnabas. Remember, these guys probably don't speak this language at all. So they're up here speaking. Paul heals them, and all of a sudden the crowds see this, and they start saying in their own language, "The gods are here. The gods are here." Paul and Barnabas probably looking around like, what's going on? And it says that they were calling Barnabas Zeus and Paul Hermes because he was the chief speaker. Again, two mythological gods from Greek history. Zeus would be like the god of all gods, king of the gods, whatever you want to call it. And Hermes is like the priest of Zeus to some degree. Oh, wait. And Hermes is the messenger of the gods. So that's why he would be the chief speaker. And that's why they say Paul's Hermes. And anyway. So we find out that Paul, again, no idea what's going on. But in the next verse, the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the last entrance of the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gate and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. So you can imagine Paul and Barnabas are standing up here, wondering what is happening? What on earth is going on? And eventually, this guy comes, and he's this priest, and he's bringing stuff for sacrifices. And they see this, and all of a sudden, they realize, oh no, they want to sacrifice to us. I think that's exactly when they realize, because this is the next verse. And when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments. They rushed out into the crowd. Remember, tearing the garments would be a way to show just absolute sadness and just showing, no, guys, stop it, no. Just a way of saying, just no. Like, you're sad. This is a way to show that. They tear their cloaks. And they rush out and they cry out, "Men, why are you doing these things? We are also men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news that you should turn from the things like this." It says, "To the living God, who made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them." Guys, you're missing it. I'm not here to put myself on a pedestal. I'm a man just like you guys. Guys, I'm telling you, turn away from these things. Stop worshiping men. Stop worshiping false gods. Look to God who created everything. He's a living God. Turn to him. Turn from these vain things. They don't matter. Guys, stop it. That's what Paul's saying here. Guys, turn away. Stop looking to these old things. We're humans just like you. Don't sacrifice to us. There's a God up in heaven. Sacrifice to him. He's worthy. It says, in past generations he allowed all nations to walk in their own ways, yet he did not leave himself without witness. For he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons and satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. So Paul's saying, hey, look, God has shown himself to you, even when you weren't his chosen people. Right? In the Old Testament, all the Gentiles were cast off. But God's like, God didn't not show you who he was. He left you with witness. He gave you rains from heaven. When it rained, that's from God. When these things happen, fruitful seasons or satisfying your hearts with food and gladness, these things are all evidence of God. Guys, it's not like God's left you to just not know who God is. It's everywhere. Us being alive is proof that there's a God. Everything we see outside is proof of there being a God. And that's what Paul's saying. There's evidence. God didn't just cast you off without giving you a reason to believe that he exists. He's given you reasons to exist, or to think he exists, to believe in him. Even though he let you walk in your own ways. He gives you the free will to say, I don't want to walk in your will, God. Even with these words, though, the people scarcely restrain the people from offering sacrifices to them. And we just see the sadness of this passage where Paul and Barnabas have come to share the good news of Jesus. And these people have turned it completely around, gotten it all wrong. And instead of looking to Jesus, they are looking to these two men to satisfy. They're looking to these two men as for deliverance when they've come to show Jesus. A great thing happened. They healed a man. But this is the way that people react. And next week, we will see what happens after here in Lystra. Because it doesn't just end here. There's more to come. More to the story. So you guys have to tune in next time. But I hope you guys like this, and I'll see you guys again. I should be back for good now. Or at least for a little bit. See you guys.